All right. All right, let's get started. Has everybody had an opportunity to look at the May committee meeting?
Second.
Favor?
Aye.
Financials for May. Don?
Sure. Go to the high level summary, and then if you have any questions, please. So these are 11 months ending May. Pretty much the same commentary that we've heard for the previous months still valid. So basically through the 11 months, we have revenues that are below budget by about 3.5 million on a budget of 74 million. And primarily it's unfavorable due to local funds, about 484,000. As you recall, that budget had the local share match coming from fund balance of $1.5 million. So cumulatively, that's a impact of 1.555 million, and this is being offset by higher than local share match for grant funded projects. State funds are below budget about $2.5 million, and that's driven by, as you'll see on the expense side, that the consultings are favorable to budget by in excess of $5 million. That's due to the timing of projects. So if we don't have the project, we don't reimburse. And then it's federal funds have been flip-flopping, but now they're unfavorable by about $600,000 below budget. And that's been a function that a lower than budgeted use of 5307 flex funds for PM reimbursement, offset by the use of ARPA funds, which we've been utilizing for operator trainees' wages, as well as the lifts that were installed in maintenance. Operator trainee wages through the 11 months is about $1,072,000. See, that's a part of the overrun on the expense side. As mentioned, in the expenditure side, we're having operating expenditures that are lower than budget by around $7.5 million. Primarily driving that is the favorable services, and that's basically the timing of the grant-funded consultancy projects. Also, that's almost 6.8 million of it, and favorable materials and supplies of $2.2 million, and contributing about 202,000 favorable utilities. On the materials aspect of it, it's primarily the $2.2 million is favorable is due to the favorable fuel variances, and we are also favorable on that favorable is about 1.4 million, so better than half of that favorability. Tires and tubes about 255,000. That's probably a function of the newly competed lease tires program at the had previously. And then the other balance of about $500,000 is in other materials and supplies and vehicle parts, which is utilities, the 202,000 favorable. That's basically due to some corrections with the water and gas meters from that extended in from prior years, as well as changing the meters. So we had some adjustments in there that have been favorable to us.
Is all that taken care of now? We think that the meters are working and everything's...
They've always been working, but
we have another go back.
They've always been saying a number, right?
it's been working.
That... Understood.
Lincoln's here, so let's not talk about that. Okay.
Moving on.
It's next. We have a couple more questions to go back on that side. So I'm not sure, obviously that will not be resolved by the end of based upon our A bill and our
Question, if I could. The timing of projects, that means that money will eventually have to be spent. It's just the timing of when it has been allocated. Gotcha.
And it creates a variance here as we're talking because we have a static point, but when the expense comes in, we're going to then resubmit it to the FTA and DRBT. So from a fund balance standpoint, it's going to be neutral. Here, we have, as you can see on the bottom here, we're at a surplus, and that's not that's contributing to it a little bit, but we're balancing our revenues and expenses. So It's just we're trying to keep track of it and report it. So sometimes it's a little hard to align them.
Messes it up when it carries over into the next year, and it's not part of the budget for this year, but it's still in there.
It's a roll carryover.
So it may be unfavorable versus budget, but then the revenues will be favorable to budget,
Right.
so they're going to offset each other.
I get it. It's just it's government accounting.
So on the unfavorable variances that are on the expense side, it's primarily in the labor, as we discussed. So in the vehicle operations, the total labor cumulative through 11 months is about $663,000, of which vehicle operations is unfavorable by $1,815,000. So
It's hard when it's unfavorable when the expenses are much below. It's again.
so we have unfavorable labor, and then it's by the favorable service. So, but the story that we have here is that,
Unfavorable to me is you had way too much overtime. That's not where we're at.
we actually, it's a good thing, but this is is a great opportunity where we recruited all the operators that we needed to. However, the budget contemplated about 300, we have about 330 and a half FTEs right now, and the budget contemplated 313. So we're fully stocked up on our fixed routes, and we made good progress on staffing the micro transit. So the new trainees that went through, those cumulative expenses are about 1.752 million. So when you look at the unfavorable labor variance, it's basically all the trainees that we put in, and we're using ARPA money to cover that. So therefore it's fund balance neutral. So as the head, right now we have about 362 personnel, and there's about 26 trainees, 7 in fixed route and 19 in micro transit at the end of May. So we're filling the pipeline, and as we go towards service expansion, we'll be ready for that. So kind of a bad thing and a good thing at the same time. So similarly, we also we're slightly unfavorable on labor on the vehicle maintenance facility, about $79,000. And that's basically driven by the new hire incentives and higher overtime to make sure that we can, as we fill the vacant positions. They're currently at head count. And then general administration is favorable by 1.4 million. That's basically due to the open positions that we have. As you can recall, we just filled the COO just recently, but that was budgeted for the full year, and we still have a CDO, and we have some other vacant positions that are in. The services, it's, our professional and technical services, planning and consulting is about 5.3 million. And those are, the projects, North-South BRT, environmental clearance and conceptual design, Western BRT expansion, the micro transit demo grants. Those are, some of them they're underway, but they're just a little bit slower than what was contemplated in the actual expense. All of those are funded by, DRTC and federal and local grants. So it's when they incur, we will have the revenue to be compatible with those expenses. So kind of much the similar story on the expense and revenue side. Flipping through, looking at now, you can see here is that the surplus now through 11 months is $3,540,000, and we're in the process of closing out the year end. So we're going through the reserve and compensated absence, some of the other non-cash type adjustments. So those will be made in the June close, but we have already captured through the May provisions for uninsured claims, short claims, and so forth. So I'm not anticipating a lot of change off of this. So I'm kind of forecasting for the June position to have a surplus between $3 to $3.5 million, barring any beginning of July. I'm not aware of anything. From a balance sheet perspective, still stable, very strong. What we're in the process of, our assets have increased since June of last year, and that's primarily The increases are increase in accounts receivable about 3.8 million from prior last year, and that's basically the grants receivables. And that's being, the total net assets have gone up by about 15 million. So about AR is about 3.8 million, is offset by a decrease in cash balances of about 5 million. And we have an increase in net property due to our investments in rolling stock and so forth. That's up to almost $10 million. And the other piece of it is our restricted CBTA. So, our cycle here is we do the work, we sit there, we put the receivable, and then we convert it to cash. So I think we have still a very healthy balance sheet. Nothing. An eye chart, apologize, but the cash flow, full year cash flow, we follow our sawtooth earlier. We have more resources at the beginning of the quarter when we bring over the CBTA money, and then it works its way down. So at the end of June, we're kind of at our lower part of our amount. So we're ending June with about $3.5 million, and anticipating some significant, which we've already seen, some significant funds that have come in from the state for reimbursements. We had 19 buses, combination of 35-foot and 40-foot buses that were delivered in February. The invoices came in between March and June. So those funding, 80% federal, 16% state, 4% local, have filtered their way through. Cash receipts for the Fed came in June. You see the big $10 million number there. And you'll see in July, we've received some of the monies, as well as in July, our zero fare support from the state funds were received just the other day, about 2 months. So everything, nothing shocking. Everything's progressing as we have in our plans.
I know this is more business focused, but like usually they do like a 5-quarter rolling, so you can make sure you're seeing more year over year, not focusing on the full year. Because what we're seeing here is, as you talked about, we got some projects that are still funded but not budgeted yet. I'm not saying these, just thinking through what we're seeing here is just the same as it was last year. This time, does this report look similar to some of the fluctuations we're seeing? Everything's fine, but making sure it's in line with what we're seeing.
It does. The time, from a cash flow perspective, things is when we receive rolling stock, and sometimes it's on the manufacturing backlog.
Right.
I believe in 2022, we received a whole bunch of buses in June, so we kind of had a very similar profile as well. But yeah, to the point, we are focusing on building out that multi-year like TSP, and we have it in something that we could bring out to this, to have a longer look to help progress. So that's something that helps us planning internally, from procurement as well as other focus to do.
And we're actually trying to do a strategic session for our September board meeting. I think it is, and we can go over that in detail.
Sure.
Instead of having a regular board meeting, we want to go into more detail.
Yeah, because the TSP is something, because as you'll see on this schedule, this is the CBTA. This is our quarter ending June, which we'll have to file by August 15th. So as you can see here, balance, we have money there that is set aside for growth, which we're contemplating, and that's part of the regional public transportation plan. So in our TSP, you start seeing that as that emerges, as we expand the service and utilization of that. So that's sure. Good news on there is we have our fiscal 25 funding already in the bank earning interest, and we have a portion of fiscal 26 already on the books and earning interest as well. Our August 8th meeting, the next steps here, we are at this time of the year, we're in audit season. We, winding up the pension audit. RideFinders field work is starting in the month of July here, I think in a week and a half. And then our fiscal GRTC audit, the field work will commence August 26th. We will have the finalized trial amounts and June numbers to review with the members of the Finance Committee at the August 8th meeting, and then we'll transition it over to Brown Edwards, and then at our November meeting, we can give an update at the October meeting. We'll are looking for sign off on the field work of the audit in October. Then we'll transition into NTD reporting, file that by the end of October, and then we'll have the auditor communications at our November meeting. It's kind of the next 90 days of focus for the finance group.
All right, any questions? Any motions to adjourn?
Give it. Second.